Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish Prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.
Hi folks, and welcome to Through a Scottish Prism midweek edition. Great to be here. We're actually in the lovely city of Perth.
Right.
And it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for the invite. Let me start right away by introducing our panel, and who better than to start with our Sally Hughes here, who is going to be standing as an independent for independence candidate at the upcoming United Kingdom general election. And on my immediate right we have our favourite lawyer, and the candidate is going to be a candidate at Alloa and Grangemouth as an independent for independence at the upcoming UK general election, Eva Comrie. And in one of his infrequent visits to Scotland, we have the Coatbridge Cavalier himself, the ex-member of Parliament for Coatbridge. It's the Coatbridge Cavalier himself, Phil Boswell. Now, there's two apologies. One is Lloyd Quinnan cannot be with us tonight. He has an issue at home that has to be sorted. He sends his apologies, but we'll all try and fill in best for him. And as I say, we did invite the local Member of Parliament, but he's not turned up or whatever, but he's not here. But anyway, we've got some great questions. If you've got a question, if you just put your hand up. I've lost him. Where is he? Oh, there. We've got, if you do, we'll hand you a bit of paper and a pen, and you can write your question down and we'll answer it. Although, I think we might get plenty to be going with. I'll start one here from William Duguid. It's fair to say there's some unease in the Yes movement about the quality of the current crop of politicians. What can we do to find people of the right quality to take an independent Scotland forward? Sally, to you first.
I don't think it's the quality of the people. I think it's the way that parties across the board are structured. You'd like to think that all the political parties with their individual aims would filter and cultivate the very best person to deliver those aims. But my experience would seem to suggest the opposite is what happens. So when you speak to people on the doors, when you speak to people in your neighbourhood, at your work, at the Yes Hub, you find there is no shortage of talent, and we actually saw that in 2014 in the aftermath of that, when there was so much talent available, and there was. I don't quite know how it's been misdirected in the last 10 years and robbed of its initial initiative, but the talent is there. We are a very talented nation, but there's something wrong with the structure of all the political parties that muffles that and doesn't cultivate it.
Thank you. Phil, you were a Member of Parliament, and obviously you were top quality, obviously. But on the question, what do you think we can do to improve the quality of the representatives going forward?
Look amongst ourselves and avoid too many career politicians. They are constructed, they are programmed, and they do not listen to the people that do what they're told. So that we must avoid. When you look at I'm an accidental politician. It was never supposed to be one. And there was a great many of us. If you look in the 56 in 2015, you had Philippa Whitford, a breast surgeon. You had Joanna Cherry, a QC. The list goes on. You had people who had real life experience. And some of the smartest people, you don't have to have a degree. You just have to have lived in life. You just have to have smarts about you. And eyes in your head, as they say. We should look amongst ourselves for people with compassion, understanding, empathy, someone with a rationale and courage to stand up for what's right and not to kowtow to those who would dictate to us how we should run our country their way, so they get their wee empire built. It frustrates me immensely every time I look back at this, at the trust they put in these career politicians. They did not put their faith in the people. The people elected who were put forward. Now, most folk, we don't have the time to get into all the detail, and we don't really understand how it works, because it's a full-time job. And there's another side to this argument, party discipline. If you're a political party, there's something called the dark arts, the games that people play, the machinations for moving into positions of power. Instead of putting the best people for the job, you can't run things with committee. You need to be a wee bit dictatorial to some degree. So there's an idea or a notion, and a principled notion, that we do this because fairness and equality, egalitarian, all the kind of reason that you would deduce that would make it right. But the reality is sometimes it's called the whip for a reason. You do need a whip hand at times. It's like running a company. I run big teams, and I'm paying them lots of money, and they won't do what they're telling. How are you going to run an independence organisation with all these bright people with ideas and passion and experience and life experience, and you get some spotty wee Herbert that's woke telling you what to do? Believe this, a man can be a woman. You know, and all the other assorted pish that came out. So that is highly frustrating when you're an experienced individual that understands how life is. When you're looking after your own, you'll get a job, your family come first, God forbid you give a wee bit of time to have something social. So understanding what we're going through right now, the splinters and the trouble and the fighting we're all going through, is because our enemy have their way. They have us divided. They have us at each other's throats. And that's the thing that these idiots don't recognise. They're too busy following instructions and lining their own nests to actually be aware that they're being played. We would know we were being played eventually. We'd cotton on because we've been around the block a couple of times. That's the kind of people we need.
Eva, how do we find more quality Eva comrades?
I'm not the only one, there's another one. The population of Scotland is an intelligent population. We built the world. Our people have travelled internationally, building the infrastructure of so very many countries. Scots have written the constitutions of various countries that took their independence from the British and other empires. If you turn on the telly though and you watch either First Minister's questions or Prime Minister's questions, you would probably give the lie to that. And the problem is, as Phil and Sally have said, the party political structure. So I'm happy to be free of that, in part because one of my political heroes was Jimmy Reid. And I hope that this year, with schemes for independence, as Leanne Tervit promotes, No to My Parliament, as Alan Petrie promotes, that we'll be able to return real power to the people by signing up those who have not been on the voters' roll for donkey's years, and by giving them hope that by voting for independence they'll transform their own lives and the lives of future Scots. So to do that, what we need is to produce a generation of politicians strong enough not simply to win the independence argument or to negotiate the strong independence settlement with Westminster, but also to build the country that we deserve for Scotland to be. And the way to do that is to chap every door and speak to your friends, your neighbours and your relatives and persuade them to A, be registered to vote, and B, vote for independence. And I'm sure we'll come on to how you do that later on in the show, but that's the way it needs to be done. No more of these career politicians who get a part-time job, an internship when they're at university, they leave there at the age of 21 and suddenly they've become a junior special advisor, and before you know where they are, they're a council candidate, and then they're on a list for the Scottish Parliament when they have no life experience and very little qualification, let alone ability to build the country that we need. Had we politicians of that calibre, we would not only be independent now, but we would be securing the potential of everybody in the country, and we would no longer be the sick man of Europe.
We did launch Indy First on the anniversary of the crowning of King Robert the Bruce, which was kind of appropriate. And the next question is on Indy First, and it's from Jeff Bush, and it says, will Angus Brendon McNeel need Indy First to help him get re-elected, Sally?
would hope that a politician of Angus's experience would know his area inside out and not actually need the assistance of Indy First. But Indy First is a game changer for everybody that doesn't have a party and is willing to break out and stand up for what they believe, regardless of not being in a party, just because it has to be done. We're at a crisis in Scotland now. It is now or never. We can't wait for 2026. We can't wait for a fair wind. It has to be now. So the fact that Indy First has evolved and come into being to help people like myself who are brand new at this, or Angus Brendon McNeel, is absolutely fantastic, because it's going to give us the tools that we need. In effect, it gives you all the benefits of a party without the handicaps that we've seen time and time again with all the parties. So he probably won't need it, but it's going to be there if he does, and it's going to be there it's already there for people like myself that are just breaking through, and Eva, and hopefully some more.
Well, indeed, indeed. I should say two things. We've been told that there's another two independence candidates who are wanting Indy First to help them at the UK general election. Names to be announced fairly soon. We should also say that Indy First is independence agnostic. We will support people, independents, we will support the SNP, we will support ISP, we will support ALPA. Anyone who believes in independence and not just a career will get our support, because it's all about the nation, it's all about the country, not the party. Eva, do you think Angus Brendon needs Indy First help?
I don't think he needs it. He's welcome to have it and to use the IAP to identify his support and to identify those who still have to be persuaded to the cause. But I think that the people of Scotland, and particularly those 53% at least who support independence, cannot do without Indy First. Because if we're going to have a concerted campaign to attain our independence and get away from Westminster and stop blaming party politicians for their own lack of effort and their own lack of achievement, we as the people of the country need to take power into our own hands. That's why our app will be available for all independence campaigners to cover the entire country, from top to bottom. Every doorstep can be chapped, every single potential elector can be spoken to, provided that there are people willing to do that. And thus far I know that the feedback that Leanne has had has been substantial from every corner of the country, and I hope that that continues, because once everybody who supports independence is actually on the roll and is able to vote and is motivated to vote, what we'll attain at the general election will be a majority of independent supporting MPs. We need at least 29, and we also want a majority of the popular vote, because these two things together comprise the mandate for international recognition and for the legitimacy of then entering into negotiations comprising the independence settlement. In other words, it's UDI, but it's utterly democratic and absolutely legitimate and valid.
So Angus is a good pal of yours. Do you think that he would need the help of Indy First?
I don't know if need is the word. It's well, there's only one way to find out. You run the election, and if you lose and you didn't use it, then perhaps you did. So the bottom line, I think, is Angus Brendon is very well liked in his constituency in the Isles. I really like it, because if you support the Yes movement, be it the United Scotland, Yes 2, whatever, as long as you support the unification of everybody who has independence and independence for our people and our nation in your heart, then you're welcome to it. And that's the kind of unifying effort we need to see. Now, it could be ISP, it could be ALPA, it could be SNP, it could be independent people. But to have something as powerful as this, once it's built out, because It's all about these processes, information in, information out. If it's shit information in, you know, it's not worth much. But the more bums on seats that there are, the less boots on the ground, and that's how we get the information in, is charting doors. And the SNP currently don't have those doors getting charted. The activists have mostly left. Most of them have moved to Alabama or elsewhere, and now disillusioned by the whole movement. So something like this initiative, where you can put effort in and know it's going to legitimate candidates of any stripe, of all stripes, that I find very reassuring. And that, the more powerful an initiative like this becomes, the more leverage we have to bring those within the SNP back into line with why they exist, and why that party was invented, and why we all, most of us, worked so hard for it, and remind them that independence, nothing less.
This next question is also related to the IAP, and it's to voter registration, and it's what would be a good target percentage for voter registration. 100% obviously would be a great target. In the selected areas, what is it standing at now? The truth of that is we don't know yet. We don't know. What difference will the IAP make to voter registration, Sally?
All the difference in the world. At the moment, you're looking at cold calling around the schemes with a piece of paper. To be able to have the app on your phone and go to them, and it's not, the information's not getting loaded onto your phone. The app connects directly with, you're a conduit basically, and it connects directly to the electoral roll. And from that, you can register to vote, you can register to postal vote, and there's another thing that's escaped me just now, but it's going to be all the information that you need in your hand, and then that information gets fed back through the voters' roll in a legitimate fashion that can then assist from a canvassing point of view. And that has to be done in the appropriate manner according to the Electoral Commission rules, and that those protocols are being complied with. So it's all above board and totally legitimate. But the difference between that and going around with a piece of paper and saying, you know, I'll post this for you, and filling it out in the cold and the rain, is night and day. And once it's on the app and someone's filled it in, or you've helped fill it in for them, and they press send, that's it there, it's done, it's that quick. So that's a game changer, because up to now we've all been talking in the Yes Hub and in the parties about how do we overcome this. And it's because it's quite a slow process, it's a little bit daunting to get started. But this, it couldn't be any more efficient. It really couldn't. So to me it's a game changer, and I'm really looking forward to helping Leanne out and getting down there and getting it done, and then rolling it out up here. And I'm such a technophobe. Anybody that knows me will say, I can't do Facebook and I can't do Twitter because I can't. So to have this and not be frightened of it because I've been introduced to how it works, it's a game changer. It's an absolute game changer.
Yep, thanks. I will say that we will be putting out a training video, the IAP for dummies, I suppose you would call it. So it's for Luddites like myself who can't. It will be simplicity, so that literally everyone or anyone can use it, and we can increase our vote, I believe, dramatically. But what do you think, Eva? Do you think it will make a difference to voter registration?
I think that there's something like 4.2 million people registered to vote in Scotland. The population is about 5.5 million, but the population is ageing, so it looks like there's probably a fair number of adults who are not registered to vote. But voter apathy is even more of a problem. You know from by-elections, including the Rutherglen by-election last year, that people are not motivated to come out and vote because they watch the telly, they see the politicians speaking, and they feel that they are completely out of touch with real life. That's most evident when you look at, for example, subsidised eating and drinking habits within both Westminster and Holyrood at a time of a cost of living crisis and a fuel crisis for so many Scots who depend upon food banks and welfare funds. So I think that one of the reasons why the IAP will be a powerful weapon in our independence armoury is because we are going to chat every single door in the country. That contact that we will have on the doorsteps from the ordinary people of this country will enable us to give them hope and the optimism that voting for independence can make our country a better, happier place, but it will also be a more prosperous place when all those people who have felt disenfranchised and who are not currently voting actually exercise their right to vote and vote for the candidates that they trust and make sure that those candidates, when elected, carry out the policies on which they were elected. You know, it's no secret I'm a former member of both the SNP and ALBA parties, and I joined both of them because I've believed in independence all of my life. I am not a party member any longer because I don't think that the party system at this point in time for Scotland is the answer. I believe with all my heart that the people of Scotland ought to be electing folk whose driving force in politics is to liberate Scotland from Westminster rule. And I know that I am far from alone in that, and I'm encouraged that there are more people coming forward. We will be able to help every candidate who wants to stand as an independent candidate, but what is the overruling factor is the people of the country require to know that those they elect will do the job that they are elected to do. They will be held to account, they will be responsible, they will not go down to Westminster and settle down, because when I go to Westminster it will be to settle up. My ambition is not to be an MP, my ambition is to be the last MP elected for Alloa and Grangemouth.
If you actually look at the last opinion poll I saw was the one that was done for STV, and it showed that, again, as it had been for about the last 18 months, 53% of the people were voting, were asked, would vote for independence. Yet the SNP are running somewhere between 33 and 39%, the ALPA party at 1%. So there's 12–13% of pro-independence people who don't feel they want to vote for anyone, but they want to vote for independence. So we have to motivate them, we have to get them out. And I think IAP will help. What do you think, Phil?
Well, apathy. Apathy is the big word. Where we know we have a chance of really changing things, of taking control of our own country, just as in the 2014 Scottish referendum, when the turnout was 84.6%, even when you've got mandatory votes, they're not, it's never going to be 100%. You're never going to get that. And even when you do get high-level votes, there's a lot of spoiled ballots because people object to being forced to vote. What we need is to motivate people and give them the opportunity, the real opportunity to understand that you can make a difference. Your vote actually matters. Because the last UK turnouts for the last election, I had to look it up there, 59.4 and 61.4%. That was the general election turnouts. So if we can improve that, and we're improving it with telling people and illustrating to people and showing people that we're going to be at this and we're going to work at this and we are going to be steadily directed towards independence and taking control of our own country, regardless of what parties float in and float out, come in and out of fashion, well, let's face it, SNP have been corrupted to the core now and are now infiltrated it. Appallingly, which saddens me terribly. It saddens me, but I saw it happening, and I know some of them are. Wish there was something more we could do about it, but let's see. So for me, it's we need to stop the squabbling for power, inside the parties, across organisations. Everybody who has started an initiative or has put in any effort whatsoever into persuading one other person that independence is the way forward is our friend. Even if we disagree vehemently with, if they're Michael Fry, who I worked with, and I'm no communist, but you know I'm not, and I'm a bit of a capitalist, but you know he's a wee bit too far right for me. But I'll tell you what, I'll take his vote. And I'll work with him, and if I can get more votes by working with him for our country, because when this is over and dust settles, we've got to run a country, and it's got to be for all of us. If we really believe in democracy, which we do, and it'll never be perfect, but by God, how difficult is it to be better than the crap we're suffering under now?
I remember an SNP conference back in the 70s, showing my age here, where Winnie Ewing, my great hero, was speaking, and Tam Dael had mentioned about the slippery slope to independence, and Winnie said, I'll take him in one hand and a Tory in the other, and I'll slip to independence together. I'm of that opinion. That struck a chord with me, and I'm with it. I'm going to say this, I'm going to burn in hell for this. I would vote Tory if I thought we'd get us independence. I would. I will vote for anyone that will bring us the independence, and then we can sort it out later. I won't be voting for him the second time, but for the first time I would. Which brings me on nicely to another question, which I know with my two colleagues in particular, to my right, I'll be really interested in this one. And it's from Alan Pater, and it's the Grangemouth Refinery this week declared a £100 million plus profit, but they're closing it down, and I don't know if it's because they use the words transition that the SNP are all for it closing down. They don't seem to be doing anything about it, Eva. Why are they not doing anything about it?
Because they're pretty useless, really. What we know is that if Grangemouth closes, or if the refinery closes, Scotland's oil will be taken south to be refined and sent back up the road again, and it will be shipped out to be refined and shipped back in again. It is a completely unacceptable, bizarre set of circumstances. It's been known for at least a year that the refinery was under threat, and during that time the SNP and Greens sat on their hands. The SNP sat on their hands because green tail, wagging yellow dog that we've become so familiar with over the course of the past couple of years. But Grangemouth is not a local problem, it's a national problem, because if that refinery closes, that will represent the continued de-industrialisation of our country, along the lines of exactly what happened in the Thatcher years. But this will be worse. This will be total devastation, because how on earth will we manage if we cannot refine our own product? We will be a third world country in all but name. So it can't be allowed to happen. The unions are doing their best to put up a fight, but they cannot do that on their own. It needs every politician in Scotland who favours the care that the Scottish economy requires, whether they're independent supporting politicians or not. Every Scottish politician has a positive public duty to make sure that that refinery doesn't just stay open, but that the current refinery is not simply repaired, it is replaced, because there is a bounty in the North Sea worth of the order of £80,000 million to come out in the course of the next few years. There's plenty of money there to fix Grangemouth. What is absent from most politicians, except for Kenny McCaskill and Alex Salmond and their colleagues, and me and Sally and a few others, we're the folk that want to save it. So we're the people that you should be voting for, and I say that very deliberately, because without Grangemouth as a functioning refinery, Scotland will be the desert rather than the land of potential and plenty that it would otherwise be.
Well, I know you think that we should have a new refinery, but the question is, why are the Scottish Government not fighting tooth and nail for this?
Bought and sold for English gold, Mr. Ratcliffe's gold in particular, probably because this man is a co-owner with the Chinese CNOC in Grangemouth, and from what I understand, the Freeport, he has interests in that, and that land sits within the new Freeport area. Coincidence? No. The other thing is, a contract will be written that will tie this up for, I think, 25 years.
Yeah.
Yes.
And breach of contract, standard Scots law, doesn't matter. You pay a price for breaching contracts, and who's going to pay that? And for me, for the Scottish people, if someone stole something for you, would you have to buy it back? No. Let's string a few of them up and see how many more complain. No, I'm joking, right? Kinda. But, no, but do you know what I mean? It's like, if someone steals for you, why do you let them away with it? Why are we letting these people walk in and walk all over us? It's time we woke up, and many of us are getting more and more angry about it. The west coast of Scotland, the oil industry started like way down at like 5 o'clock off the east coast of England, round about Felixstowe, and they pushed an oil rig into the water. That's what the Americans did when they came over, into the shallows. And we've been working our way gradually around because you need higher and greater technology to deal with higher pressures, greater depths, greater amount of sulphur. And it's mostly the sea, the swell, operating cranes, vessels, the kind of technology to grab it and gathering systems. We are now west of Shetland. I worked on two $5 billion projects. Quad 204 and Clare Ridge. Profit in Quad 204, ballpark about 30 million a day. 30 million a day over 35 years. It's when I went in, and you need to understand real figures, you've got to get the top floor at Shell or BP, and I only did that once at Shell, and I found out some of the real numbers, and that turned me from a very well paid commercial and contracts manager for BP and Shell into someone who was warned by my friend security that I was a security threat when the British government came up to sign a contract for the carbon capture and storage contract that we were signing, which I knew was a con, and I went down to Westminster and it was proved to be a con because they pulled the rug from under it eventually. So no, when you see what's been stolen, what the corporations are making, what the government is taking, and what little comes by as these pipelines flood that oil south, and all that revenue goes south, it should make us very, very angry. And there's another one, people say, oh, it's too late, they should have done it in the 70s. It's like going to a party. If you're invited to go to a party at 7 o'clock but your ma won't let you go, it's 10 o'clock, you can still go to the party, get pissed, maybe get lucky, maybe get a kebab. Why would you not go? Really? That's where we are now. We're not even halfway through the reservoirs. The known reserves are worth incredible amounts of money because you're not allowed to speculate on that because you can influence and affect share pricing by forecasting increased volumes on what your reserves may or may not be. And a few people have been caught out on that one. And most of the findings to the west of Shetland is the technology increases and we start gathering systems on the seabed. I specialise in subsea umbilicals, risers, flow lines, the technology that brings this stuff from and FPSOs, like miniature refineries on oil tankers on a swivel tethered to the seabed with the gathering systems. The technology is improving. We're going deeper, we're getting into more rougher seas, and we've got the whole out past west of Shetland, out past Schiehallion, way out into the Rockall Basin. We've got fire ice, we've got all the minerals. The wealth of Scotland is why we are being subjugated. The wealth of Scotland is being stolen, and it's been stolen from under our feet. And look at the good thing is, it's mostly older people like us that are here. Why? Because we take the responsibility for the future that we hand to our children, and I'm not having it. I'm not having them steal from my children, my grandchildren, and that's why we are going to do something about it, and it's why we will be united, we will fight, and by God, these pillagers and thieves must be taken to account.
Dave, if you just wait till the guy with the microphone there, Alan, gets to you. Who's got the microphone? No, we'll come back to you in a minute when the microphone's ready. Sally, Grangemouth, it's not going to just be Grangemouth, Falkirk and Larne, but this, the waves of disappointment and unemployment, etc., will hit your constituency as well.
Oh yes, it's going to affect every corner of Scotland. But they have a problem because for the last 10 years everybody here has been having a conversation with their neighbours, with their work colleagues. Sorry, I'm getting an interruption here. Everybody's been having that conversation, and the information about Scotland's natural wealth is actually getting through to the no voters, to the unionists, to the Conservatives. They don't like to admit it, and you have to get them in a good mood, but with a wee twinkle in their eye, now and again they admit it to you. They know, and Grangemouth hits them in the pocket. Grangemouth is a gift to us, because we can use that, and we're going to use that, to get the previous no voters on side. It's a step too far by Westminster, even for our no voters. And 70% of the vehicle fuel in Scotland is produced at Grangemouth for Scotland, but they also supply the north of England and Northern Ireland, and all the aviation fuel in Scotland, both civilian and military, is produced at Grangemouth. So I've got Scone Aerodrome on my area, right? That's a gift to me. Right? That's a gift because it's people training to do the engineering on the airplanes, and also the people learning to fly there. So we're going to use Grangemouth and convert. And the other thing is the Conservatives in this area, for an independent person rather than a party, they know that independence is the lever, the threat that might make the Conservative Party change the Grangemouth result. Not if it's a party and it's too real and too close, but for somebody that's going to go down to Westminster and raise hell, that's going to be a mouth that gets in about them, that's going to research and make it very, very awkward for them. And basically I'm going to fight. And I'm not ashamed to use the term fight, because it's going to take a fight. It's not going to be violence, it's not going to be guns, it's not going to be bombs, but I am going to fight, and we are going to win, because we have no option. And I can't think of a finer country and people in it to stand at my back and fight for when we're up against it. We're going to have to win.
I mean, it's just the fact that this government, or any previous or successive government down in Westminster, they don't keep us in the Union because of our charm. Let's be clear, they're keeping us for our resources and our wealth, and we have to fight tooth and nail. Now, a supplementary, if you like, question on it, but Dave, you had something you want to say. I've been informed by Techie that the mic and the camera will pick you up.
It was always saying about when you've signed a contract, you have to pay compensation. You do if the people involved in taking the contract haven't been informed beforehand that they were actually taking part, signing a contract that was illegal or unlawful. And Sal was actually just contacted everyone who are part of the Free Boards and both the fourth estuary and up north, that if they sign these contracts, that they'll be warned that they don't have the right to, the people who are actually giving them don't have the right to do so, and that they all know they take compensation eventually when we take back our own resources.
Thanks for that.
Let's go with that.
Which brings me nicely onto my next question from Jackie Anderson, which is, why are none of the political parties fighting tooth and nail against free ports, Eva?
Where would you begin? Obviously it's Kate Forbes in her previous role as the Minister for, I think, the Economy, who promoted free ports. And the difficulty surrounding free ports, which has been very plain by the work that Salvo and others have done, is the level of secrecy that there is surrounding exactly what the precise arrangements are. So we have to have some regard to what's happened with free ports elsewhere in the UK. And we know, I think Lloyd Quinnan's quite hot on this one, we know that the, is it Teesport? Teesside Freeport has been controversial for various reasons, not the least of which is that there were substantial assets there worth millions that were handed over for £1. Similar situation seems to be arising here in our two Freeports, and it's likely that the companies who will be situated within the Freeports will have preferential tax and other treatment, which means that, in effect, the Tories are doing cut-price deals with their corporate industrial friends. We also know that people who will work within the Freeports will have poorer terms and conditions of employment than out with the Freeport. Another major issue is to do with the prospect of compulsory purchase orders being used or to buy land or buildings from people who don't want to sell. And these are all the controversies, or these are some of the controversies surrounding free ports, which explain why not even local authority councillors in Fife, which is part of the free port, or the Cromarty area, which is one of the others, these councillors don't get briefings from the council telling them what the free port actually involves. I went to the Freeport meeting in Dunfermline a few weeks ago that Izzy there and Salvo organised, and there was a councillor from Fife there who, when he arrived, knew nothing about free ports, and when he left, made a speech thanking the organisers because he knew far more when he left than when he arrived. Similar position applies in relation to Cromarty. There is an inordinate amount of secrecy about something which to me sounds very much like a scam, and a deal or a series of deals being done between the Scottish and the Westminster governments.
I'll just do a wee advert, if I may, first. If you go to Through a Scottish Prism or Barhead Boy and just put in free ports, there's a video I did, a programme I did with Lloyd and Councillor Brown from Teesside, and I mean it's grand larceny on a monumental scale that's going on there.
Did you know?
Did I know?
We were talking about political parties and how or not pronounced like this. Steve Chisholm is the second in command in Inverness in the Cromarty Freeport for global energy. And he has been recruited by Apathy to be an advisor, an economic advisor.
Yeah, well, I've heard actually maybe even a candidate for Westminster.
Perhaps. That's not official.
I mean, it's quite bizarre. And I don't understand why the Scottish Government aren't fighting this tooth and nail, because it's another pillaging of our resources. Sally.
Free ports, they're the Trojan horse to wind back every single positive development that we've made as a society in the last 100 years. You're talking about employment rights, you're talking about environmental protections, you're talking about the tax base that we all contribute towards, which was, let's face it, the original circular economy. That's a very popular phrase these days, but we do actually have a circular economy in existence. It's when we work and we pay our taxes, and from our taxes we get pension, police service, education, health service, and it's worth protecting. The Trojan horse, the free ports, do away with that by stealth and deception. One of the reasons I think people like myself have been slow on the uptake of this is because we can see how dangerous it is and how devastating it is, and there's only so much of that you can absorb at one time, and it's quite frightening. But as I said before, we're at the 11th hour now for Scotland, and we've got to win, and this is an issue that's just not going away. From a campaign perspective, it's our job to introduce the danger of this to our businesses, to our environmental people who are interested in the environment, protecting the environment, to our employers and people. It's just so encompassing, so dangerous. It's going to enable them to bypass all the normal border controls and invite smuggling, including human trafficking. It will devastate local businesses. It will introduce the concept of private police forces into these areas. We don't have private armies in Scotland, apart from where I thought. But it's unlawful for a reason. We don't go in for these gated community type situations, and there's a reason for that. We don't need to. By and large, we're a very law-abiding country, and it's because we police by consent, and it's because we have our circular economy. So this has to be fought tooth and nail, and people have to be introduced. And I, honestly, all I can think of for why the parties aren't shouting about this, and it comes down to being captured, and it breaks my heart that people that I've trusted and thought would lead us are going down this route.
Freeports, are you?
No, it's a con, a total con, and as Roddy says, check out that Prism episode with Lloyd and the chap from Teesside. Very informative, grand larceny indeed. Sal are also doing good work on this. Alf Baird's a top guy that we should be listening to, and we have had Alf before, trying to get him on again maybe. He's excellent on such things. But why the political party's not doing it? Again, there's too busy jostling for self-interest. SNP with the establishment, the British establishment, and their forces on Freeports. And Alapa, I don't know why. I mean, to see them turn away from their stated intent of being an alternative to SNP and go down the same road with this guy is a massive disappointment. Alex, what are you doing, mate? What are you doing, mate? Question for you.
There's some amazing questions coming in. I think we're going to have to do a two-parter, Techie, I tell you. I really do. Which brings us on to another one of the topics of the day, which is on Monday, I think it is, the first, how appropriate, on April Fool's Day, the hate crime bill is landing, and it's certainly given a laugh to the rest of the world. We even got on Scotland was even mentioned in the Joe Rogan show, one of Phil's favourite podcasts, about this insanity that's coming our way. And these two questions are together. How do we think we should, as the general public, should tackle the hate crime bill? Well, as I said in a previous Prism, I put actor and comedian in my bio because apparently I'm not going after them. So that's what I'm doing. I'm also leaving the country, which is even smarter. And the other one is, how long will it take until Police Scotland and the criminal justice system grinds to a halt after the introduction of this hate crime bill? And that's from Arthur Martin. Eva.
You're a very lucky audience because you've not only got a lawyer, you've got two ex-cops on the panel, and there are more ex-cops in the audience.
I'm still taking the tablets.
And although we're laughing about this, it's a really serious business. Not simply because people might be prosecuted who ought not to be, but because the punishment is the process. It is anticipated that there will be an innumerable number of complaints from people who, quite frankly, are at it. And that is especially so in relation to the issue about transgender identity, because it looks like it will be an aggravator in certain circumstances if you try to argue that gender ideology is somehow wrong-minded, and if you try to argue that there are but two sexes. So, enshrined in law, and I can't give you the precise wording because it's in my phone that John made me turn off, but enshrined in law are definitions now of what transgender identity means, and it includes people who say that they are non-binary, and I find that very difficult to accept because I don't believe that there is such a thing as being non-binary. You're either male or you're female. Unfortunately, there are exceptions within hate crime whereby if you have a religious view, you're entitled to hold that view. What the law does not enable is somebody like me who just has a belief in science to create that as a defence if it's alleged that somehow I've said something that comprises a hate crime. But to make life ever more difficult, normally in the criminal law in Scotland, you have two different aspects to a conviction. You have the physical act of whatever it was that you did, and you have the mental side, which is the intention of the alleged criminal. The position with hate crime legislation is different. There is no need to show any intention on the part of the accused person in respect of hate. What is sufficient to prove the hate element is if the alleged victim perceives that what was said or done comprises hate. So in essence, there may be a position where there are very false claims that are made in reality, but in law they might actually end up being proven because whether or not it's hate is in the eyes of the beholder, not of the person who is the perpetrator. Now, the guidance that the police have got is fundamentally flawed for innumerable reasons. One is that they promised that they would consult at length while a lot of the women's groups who were frightened about this legislation, they didn't do that. when they wrote their guidance. They picked and chose the few favourite usual suspects to negotiate with and to help them to write their guidance. Those are mainly people who are captured by gender ideology. Furthermore, the police guidance that was online until I think this morning said that you could have a belief that would enable you to be excused otherwise. That's not what the law says. Belief is not included. Religion is, belief is not, as an excuse. So even the police don't understand the terms of the Act. That isn't a surprise though, because the man who was in charge of drafting the guidance retired a while ago and seems not to have been replaced. What's perhaps also significant is if you have regard to the identity of the top, I think, 8, maybe 10 officers in Police Scotland, not one of them came up through the ranks of the Scottish Police Force. Some came from Northern Ireland, some came from the Met, and further afield throughout England. And it just seems really strange to me that when you've got more than 53% of the population of Scotland seeking independence, you've got a hate crime act which the general population do not support, which does not protect women, which damages people like me who believe that there are only two sexes. And this has been brought into force at a point in time when every senior police officer in Scotland was not a product of the Scottish Police Force, and therefore has become someone who has come to work in Scotland learning the practical application of Scots law based on guidance written by people who, in my view, do not understand Scots law and have a hidden agenda in relation to how to silence the population. That is why people are closing down Twitter accounts. It is why women in particular, many women, are afraid to speak. They're afraid to express a view in relation to the transgender problem because they're scared that they either get arrested or they get their phones or their computers or their iPads lifted and retained by the police for years on end. Now, if this legislation is not overturned, there will be hell to pay because the number of lawyers that are speaking out against it are legendary. I have rarely, if ever, seen so many lawyers practically unanimous on the points that are very, very controversial and, quite frankly, very dangerous.
Phil, same question, but also just adding on to one, a supplementary from Leanne, which is, do we agree that we should submit SAR requests to see if they hold the data on us, giving our gender critical views?
Yeah, everybody should do it. We should do it all the time because the first question, how do we, the people, tackle the hate crime bill, is answered by the second question, how long will it take to grind the whole system at all? We should be working to grind the system to a halt and this is part of it. It's horrific. It's 1984. It's Orwellian. It's all our nightmares wrapped up in it. Attacks the fundamental principle of free speech, which is the one thing that we can use to unite ourselves to fight the institutions that have been contaminated and completely overtaken by the British establishment. And we can only take control of that by speaking freely and openly and honestly to people about what's actually going on. They're shutting us up. They're taking away the as I said before, even last week, it turns up every time. The freedom of speech is the right with which we protect all other rights. It is that fundamental, and we must fight. There's people have died for this all around the world, and we're regressing. We're going backwards, and it's an absolute disgrace. The horror of this wins, of course, is consulting legal counsel on whether or not to close on or before the 1st of April for fear of persecution. Public enemy number one. Think of the irony of this. In spite of being the voice of the majority of Scots, as we want independence, and he speaks for us, and yet he's been silenced. We're being silenced. We must not be silent.
As another policeman, you give your opinion, but I was speaking to a senior Scottish lawyer recently who he said that he believes that there will be multiple amounts of complaints, but few, if any, convictions. What do you think?
Well, I think that goes to the heart of it being about the processes, the punishment, and that chilling effect on freedom of speech. The initial question was how to tackle it. I think the Chief Constable has a really huge part to play in this, and some very serious questions to answer. All the power that the police have comes from the office of Constable, and that includes the Chief Constable. And with police with consent, this law has been slated by retired KCs, by the Police Federation, by women's groups. It is an absolute unworkable, bad law, badly written mess. And the irony is, a big structure of it was already challenged in the courts in England by retired police officers. And it went to appeal and they won. And they had the amendment that it was, it had to be significant and real threat to a person based on their characteristics. Significant and real, not hurt feelings. That amendment, the current Chief Constable that we have now was put in place at the back end of last year. She was a senior officer in the north of England at the time of that court case in England, when the police college in England changed their guidance. So she has been brought up with this mess as it was argued out in the English system, and she cannot be ignorant of that. And now she's presiding over this mess being rolled out in Scotland, and she's not saying a peep. So I'm deeply concerned, do the officers know what the law is? Because already it's been challenged. It's been challenged by Murdo Fraser. What have we come to when I'm on the same side as Murdo Fraser because he's talking sense? He's talking sense. And it's like, so Murdo's challenging this on legal fronts, and he's quite right to do so. So how can a police officer on the beat implement this fairly? They can't. It's impossible. It's so badly written. And the thing that also concerns me, they're going to roll out the remote reporting of this, remote recording of this out with a police station with trained staff. And one of the remote stations is a sex shop. The Chief Constable has got to answer what risk assessment has been done there, because it's vulnerable people who will be reporting these crimes. In a shop, in a queue, with people queuing up to buy sex toys and pornography, by a staff member who's trained to sell sex toys and pornography, does nobody see that that's a crime waiting to happen, that that's someone vulnerable who will be stalked by someone who is predatory? It's so obvious, it shouldn't need stated, it's a disgrace. And I can't believe that Police Scotland, which I was a police officer for 25 years, I cannot believe they brought it down to this level. So, the Police Federation have criticised this, but they had better be getting legal advice to back up their officers, because the one law, police officers are bound, it's a structured organisation and they're duty bound to follow orders. The one exception to that is when that order is unlawful. And I would argue that this entire bundle of mess, this badly written law, is unlawful in its entirety, and the Chief Constable has got to answer to that.
I agree with you. Could have a large gimp soup, please, and someone's hurt my feelings. Could you take it? No, we're running out of time, and I want to get you all in as much as I can. If I just could, someone's asked, I don't know who's written this one, a particular question. If we could be quick with your answers, folks. Now we've got a few more questions in. Eva, if 300 people witness an Orange Order march, can they register that as a hate crime incident at their local sex shop? I added the wee bit at the end.
Having seen what goes on at these marches, I would imagine there's great potential for that, yes.
There you go. Okay, as I say, I've got a few more questions. Techie's telling me to hurry up because we're running out of time, so I'll try and get them in as quick as I can. There's a couple of crackers, and I really would like to get to this one. Why won't Hughes Yousaf resign, I agree, as First Minister and trigger a Holyrood election that can legitimately be used as a de facto independence election and deliver our independence? Is he, after all, did he not say he was the first activist? What do you think, Phil?
Hamza's doing his tale. He's basically continuing the story that we got when Alex handed the reins over to Nicola in 2014. And Nicola, for 3 reasons that I know, has been blackmailed into doing what she's told. And that's just me. So what about MI5? What about the 77th Brigade, who've got resources and a wherewithal to know? We know. Most people in this room know what's going on and what the story is. And what Hamza's doing is continuing, and this is my belief by straight state, not Scottish Prisms necessarily, but that Nicola is desperately trying to escape prison. Her husband will go to prison for what has happened here, I believe. And what we've got now is the people who, and this is how politics work, particularly the dark arts, they get the youngsters to do something, they do stuff that they shouldn't really be doing, something a wee bit questionable, maybe a wee bit corrupt. You're in the pocket and you follow orders all the way through. What we've got now is a group of people running the SNP who are in the pocket of the establishment, will do exactly what they're told. They'll try to keep their boss out of jail because all the favours they're getting are dependent upon keeping her out of jail and keeping their keepers happy. So you don't have people who represent us anymore. We've got shysters, thieves, and people that, quite frankly, in days gone by would have been home, drawn and quartered for being traitors to this country and the people.
Why won't Hughes collapse the Holyrood?
Because Hamza's motto is not the motto of most of the people in this room. He's party before country, when it should be country before party. That's the simple, short answer.
I'd go further than that and say Hamza's out for Hamza. And I don't think he's any intention or any desire to have Scotland get its independence.
I'll wrap up with a couple of one from John Brown, and he wants to know, Phil, post-independence, should voting be made compulsory in an independent Scotland?
Democracy. I think we have the right to dissent and the right to partake. I would say no, generally, but because where it has been tried, Australia, I believe, do it, and they do get good turnouts, but as I said, there's a huge proportion of these votes are spoiled deliberately because they're forced to go on threat of prosecution, but they draw a banana on it or something, you know, it's like whatever. So I would say no. I think having meaningful, see if the game's not fixed, that's what our target should be. Make sure the game is not fixed and that people know that what they will get what they vote for. That's what we should be looking for.
That's why we've got my parliament. Well, our dear friend Mr. Petrie over there, what do you think, Eva?
I think that the choice here is between carrot and stick. Making voting compulsory is the stick. We need the carrot because we need to give people confidence in the voting system, and we need to give them hope and optimism that the people that they can elect will make the country a better place.
One of his carrots? No, I think so.
Sally, do you think it should be compulsory, or should it be up to the parties and the independents to make motivate the public to go out there and vote?
I think the parties go to extraordinary lengths to make sure the main issue of the day doesn't reach the ballot paper. I mean, it took us over 300 years to get a referendum in the first place, so that's an example of how far they'll go. I would like to see, instead of it being compulsory, I would like to see that there was a formal day put aside for voting, that kids are introduced to the concept, and that for people that don't see a party or a policy that they want, they get they're able to put what they do want, what the issue of the day is, and that issue, as they describe it formally and properly, is valued and recorded as such. So, and part of the reason for my thinking is this initiative, Not My Parliament. I think it's genius, and initially I was slow to come on board with that because I thought, oh, you mustn't damage your paper, you know, a ballot, a vote is a very precious thing. This keeps, the Not My Parliament initiative keeps people voting, keeps them registered, and it puts the main issue of the day right on the ballot paper. It's not an obscene redrawing or anything of that nature. It puts the issue of the day right on the ballot paper when all the main parties have avoided it and ducked and dived and made sure it didn't go on the ballot paper. So that would be my answer for that. Make it a day that's valued so that people get a day off to vote. And then if they don't like anything there, there's an empty box and they can put down what the policy is that they actually want and then publicise that. So if you get 20% of the electorate saying, I want independence, or if it's 90%, and you guys aren't offering it to me, that gets recorded.
Everything else in all our institutions, everything has to be looked at post-independence. And one of them is, I agree, we should be voting at the weekends. It's always been a Thursday, so it stays a Thursday, and I don't think it's the best. I agree with you. The last question I'm going to use, and the other questions, ladies and gentlemen, I haven't used tonight, be assured I'm going to use them. Makes life a lot easier for me. I'll use them in our next Prism. That'll make life a lot easier for me. But the last question, which I think is a great one, once we're independent, what will be your first priority, Eva? Mine's to get pissed.
I don't have one single priority. I've got a raft of measures that I would want to introduce overnight, targeting poverty. Poverty of financial worth, poverty of spirit, and poverty of aspiration. So I would want to have radical measures setting up overnight a National House Building Corporation, a National Energy Company, and doing something very, very direct in respect of our education, including free school meals from nursery to university. So that's a good start.
Phil, what about yourself?
Yeah, poverty's right up there, but the first thing you do that, the first thing you would do is get the right people in place. Find amongst us the best of us with the right intentions and pure heart. Good luck with that one. But to run the country efficiently, you want the economy to be operating properly. You want to understand, I mean, energy has to be managed properly. You have to get the right consultants. It's a gradual, slow process. It really is. I mean, the first thing you do is continue with the building process for the future for our children. That's what we do.
One of the questions was, you know, we should shake up the civil service, absolutely. It's the UK civil service out, let's get in a Scottish civil service, I say. As you've been our hostess with the mostest, and this is your tune, and it's you are going to be the future Member of Parliament, it's only right that you get the last word in this show. What will be your first priority?
Get the energy companies up and running so that Scotland gets a percentage, just like Norway does, and get the heating back on.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very, very much for your time. Thank you for being here. Thank you for a great audience. I've not once had to say you're on mute, which is always a bonus for me. So I've not got any pounds, but if you get any pounds, there's a nice wee bucket there if you want to throw some money into it. Thank you very much. Good night and God bless.
Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.